close.
It's just hard.
Hi everybody, so for this devlog I created an audio system with some custom sounds, and all of these sounds I made myself along with the help of my kids and just some general items around the house and some items from a park. I'll put a list of the sounds and how they were made in a bit, but for now I'm just going to demo the sounds. I won't demo all of them because there's quite a few, but just some of the major ones. First thing you'll hear are these grass footsteps. And what I like about these are I didn't want them to sound too repetitive, so I actually have multiple variations of the sound and pick randomly as needed. And that same selection pattern I use for other sounds, for example, the melee swing, which we can hear here, just sort of that whipping sound. That way it doesn't get too repetitive, and maybe in the future I can create a different system, but for now this seems to work okay. And I also have melee hitting sounds. You can hear here. And then also, I added death sounds to the NPCs and the player, which is coming up soon. Oh no! And then after the player dies, if you open up the loot, you'll hear this sort of opening sound. I don't know how to describe it. And this same sound can be used for all of the panels. And I think it adds just a little more vibrance. Now the next set of sounds are related to NPCs in combat, and there's going to be a lot of things going on here, but you'll hear the orc grunting, you'll hear the player taking damage, you'll hear the melee hits landing from the orc, and then you'll hear a level up sort of bing sound. And with all of these, there is a set probability for them to fire because I had them firing every time. For example, the orc grunting, and it just sounded kind of ridiculous. So I'm going to let it play, and you can hear what I'm talking about. And soon should come the level up. And there it is. And then I can kill the orc, and he has his own death sound as well. You can kind of hear that there. So the next group of sounds are related to the abilities, which were seen in the last devlog. And first, I'll show just the generic sound for spellcasting. Now, the instant casts have their own custom sounds, and the imp, for example, has different sounds related to actions that it does. But for now, I'll show the spellcasting that we can also hear as part of the imp spawning. And I'll be honest, this is my least favorite sound. It's quite difficult to make. It's actually just my foot scraping along cement and then changing the pitch a bit. I think I can do better in the future, but to be honest, I'm terrible at arts and I'm even worse at sound, it seems. So I can actually show now the imp sounds. So the imp has a attack sound, a spawn sound, and a death sound. I'll show the death sound first. Well, that's me leveling. So there's the death sound, and then I can spawn it, and this is probably my favorite. Yep. And then you can hear the attack sound. Actually, I'll show the attack sound in a second. Before that, here's the heal sound. That was me, I think, dinging a pan with a spoon. And then the ice doesn't really have anything. It's basically just the generic sound that comes from the spellcast. And it doesnn't make any sound when it hits the ground. Maybe I should, but I didn't now. And then the dash is my son's Nerf gun. See? And that's pretty much it for that. And then this sound, which would be the dirt shield, is boiling pasta water. And the only thing I wish I would have done with that, actually I think it sounds pretty cool, is to make it a little bit longer. But for now, I think it's okay. And the last thing, as far as abilities go, is just the imp attack sound. So you'll hear imp start fighting. And it's like an eh sound. And that's pretty much it. And finally, I have some miscellaneous sounds. So for example, this will be a sound for banking. And you can hear. And there's 3 variations of that. And it's just me digging around in my kitchen cabinets. And again, there was quite a few sounds I didn't show. For example, the bowl has its own set of sounds. And there's also sounds for range, and equipping gear is a little different. Picking up loot has different sounds as well. But I'll leave those as surprises for the future. And here's a list of the sounds so far. And I'll definitely be adding more in the future as I add new functionality and NPCs and all that good stuff. The high level design looks something like this. We have entity component systems creating audio events. Those audio events are sent to the universe, where the universe basically aggregates them. And when the audio system runs, it picks up those events and passes them to the audio manager, which is responsible for converting those events into structs that hold all the information needed to play the sound, and then adds it to an active playing list, which is synchronized over a thread to a cpal callback. And in that callback, we do the spatial calculation, the distance attenuation, the mixing, and also decide if the sound can be removed from the active playlist, which is then sampled by the hardware. Here are some examples how the events are created. So we have a 2D event here for the level up sound, and we have a 3D event, which also needs the world position, as you can imagine. And these are sprinkled throughout the systems that get passed on to the universe. And that's all you would need to play the sound. And once these events are added to the universe, when the audio system runs, it will first update the listener, which is really just updating where the position of the player is, and then process the audio events, which is, again, as I mentioned, passing them on to the audio manager. So then we look at the audio manager, and we can see we have a collection here of sounds. That's the raw sound data. There's active sounds list and listener, which have to be thread safe as those go on the callback. And then the audio config, which is another collection that maps the sound file and different variations of it and different values, which will make sense in a second. So if we look in the audio manager, we have the setup for the callback here. And within the callback, there's a couple interesting parts I wanted to mention. The first one being how volume is created for 3D audio. For 2D audio, it's always just max volume, but this is an inverse distance attenuation function. It's quite old and there's a bunch of variations of it, but this worked well for me. And the reason why it's inverse is as the distance increases, the volume decreases. And you can see that here. This distance is a distance between where the sound took place and where the listener is. And as this value grows, the denominator will grow here and the fraction will then shrink. And that is representative of the volume. And then at the end, we actually want to mix the samples. And basically it takes a sample, and the way that the output is structured is by left sound, right sound. So left, right. And that's basically what this is setting up here. And there's a couple other details as part of this audio callback, but this is kind of the general gist of it. And one interesting thing, I had a problem where some of the audio should tie to the animations, and I didn't want to directly tie it into the animation system. So I created a timed audio event, and I looked at the frames in which I needed the audio to play. So if we look at the footstep on grass for the player, and I set it up where I could put in the time of the frame given 30 frames per second, and it will play the audio at that time and go through the same pipeline as before, just with this extra condition. And this worked really well. And that's pretty much up for the design. If you have any questions, you can always ask me in Discord for more details. And that's it. And thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Bye.